Okay, are we expecting anyone?
Uh, I don't think so.
Okay, that's fine. So let's get started. So I have posted few transactions in the morning, and someone using the same user ID and password. So they were kicking me out, and I tried multiple times, but all the times it happened the same time. It happened the same thing for all the time. So I just posted few transactions in the morning. So let's discuss them. And regarding the what is that, regarding foreign currency revaluation, I have not completed the configuration, so probably we'll discuss that tomorrow. I'll try to make that thing happen by today. Okay, so vendor line items. So I'm just executing considering today's date. Now we can see different, the symbols. This is called overdue, and this is called due. And you will see something called not due. So I don't see here. Let me select the other one, other vendor, executing. Now you can see overdue, not due, due, not due. Oh no, we don't have that thing now. Okay, so this is called due, and this is called overdue. Not due in the sense, if any transaction I'm posting in the future date, that becomes as a not due. Okay, so that is what basically this thing is. Now let's see the payments, vendor payments. Let's see the vendor payments, and we have multiple options in order to do that. So let's see basic difference in the vendor payments, basic options we have in the vendor payments. So I'm selecting now. I'm opening an Excel sheet. I want to discuss something on the vendor payments. Okay, so coming to the vendor payments. Okay, vendor payments. We have we have different options here in the vendor payments. Okay, first we will see is we may have a situation like picking up a vendor and picking up a an invoice, or multiple invoice, multiple invoices. So the scenario may be like this. So you will be picking up one vendor with an invoice or with a multiple invoice, and you want to make the payment. Now the other scenario may be like this. You may have multiple vendors with an invoice from each vendor, or with multiple invoices from each vendor. Okay, it means using this process we can select only a vendor, and we can pay a one invoice or multiple invoice of the relevant vendor. And whereas here we can select a range of vendors, we can select a range of invoices or whatever. So that's a basic difference. Now this process we call it as manual. This process we call it as manual, and this process we call it as automatic. Okay, so in the case of manual, what we will do is we will pick up a vendor, and will pick up one invoice or multiple invoice, and we make the payment to that particular vendor. But whereas in the case of automatic, we can select multiple vendors of multiple company codes as well. We can select the range of company codes as well. We can make the payment of multiple vendors. If at all we have 100 company codes, we can make the payments of all those vendors, of all open invoice of all those 100 company codes in one single stroke. That process is called automatic. So this is, there is some configuration and we have to create one program using our configuration, functional configuration, and we can make that thing happen. This process is called automatic payment program in SAP. APP, we call it as APP, automatic payment program. So using this program, what we will do is we will pick up multiple vendors, multiple company codes, and multiple invoice. In one single stroke, we can make all the payments of the due amounts. It captures, it triggers only the due amounts. It triggers the due amounts only. Okay. And whereas here in the manual payment, we will be selecting manually the vendor, only the company code, only the vendor, and we can select multiple invoices or a single invoice. All these things are happening manually. So let's discuss the manual vendor payment. Within the manual payment, we may have multiple situations. We may have multiple situations like full payment. The second is partial payment. Within the partial payment, we have options like residual payment or partial payment. And the second option we have is a residual payment. What exactly the difference? It means on the whole, we have got three scenarios in the manual payments. First is full payment, partial payment, and residual payment. Let's discuss what exactly this thing is. Okay, let's discuss this part. So I'm selecting this vendor 200, 100. Since we have multiple options, we will discuss this. So I'm going into a vendor payment. Now let's get into that particular transaction code. Accounts payable, document entry, outgoing payment, and F-53. So F-53 is for the outgoing payment. Path for this is easy access, accounting, financial accounting, accounts payable, document entry, outgoing payment, F-53 post. Okay, F-53 post. Just enter there, select today's date, 24th August 2019, 24th August 2019. And this is a bank account. We are selecting the bank account here. We are selecting the bank account. Our bank account is Bank of America, 2,20,000. Amount what I'm doing now. Let's say FBL1N 200, 100. I'm selecting today's date. Okay, so just execute. Here we have, see, this is called due, this is called not due, this is called overdue. Okay, now what I will do, I'll select this 35,000. Now, when I say full payment, there are three options as we have discussed just a little while ago, right? There are three options. There are three scenarios in this. So first is a full payment, partial payment, and residual payment. So if I make whole 35,000 in one document in one stroke, that's called full payment. Okay, partial and residual case will come only when you are not making full payment. Let me take this document. I want to make full payment. So I want to make 35,000. So what I will do, I'll put 35,000 over here. Okay. Now the value date is today's date, and I'm putting some text. I'm putting some text, vendor payment. Then here you can select a particular profit center, or you know uh, using the document splitting, the profit center will be triggered. This is what we call it as passive splitting. What is passive splitting? At the time of posting an invoice with this 35,000, I mean, when we are posting this 35,000 invoice, system has considered a profit center. Let's see what is that profit center system has considered. So the profit center is 1,000. And if you see the general ledger view, you can see the profit center derived to this particular vendor account. Now this 1,000 is the profit center connected to this vendor account. Now the same 1,000 will be triggered while making the payment to the same vendor, to the same invoice. Okay, to the same invoice. So this process is called passive splitting. It means in the case of passive splitting, we are not entering any profit center based on the original invoice profit center. Whatever the profit center assigned to the original invoice, the same will be derived. That is what we call it as passive splitting. Now 200, 100, I'm just selecting 200, 100, and I have multiple options here. I can select the relevant by selecting the document number or amount, posting date, dunning, or others. So I don't want to select anything. I want to pick up from the list. So I'm just going ahead with none. Select process open item, press enter, is not permitted. So it is basically expecting a due date. Let's see. Let me just change this configuration. I don't know what is that something it says. Okay, FS00. I'm just selecting what is that GL, the 200, 100. For 200, 100, we have a reconciliation account, this one. Okay, so let me do, sorry, this is not the one. Bank account, I have selected the bank account. Now in this, double click here on this and payment transactions. Now we are in the display mode, so we cannot do right away from here. So what I will do, OBC4, I will select OBC4. 1248 is ours. Double click on groups. It is 9, right? Double click here on this. Double click on payment transaction. I'll say optional entry, and I'll say value date. It is saying a suppress. So because of that, it was not allowing us. Okay, I'm just saving now. Let me just see. Okay, let us see. Okay, let me post this transaction again. F-53. So I'm selecting the amount, same amount, value date I'm selecting now. Selecting the vendor. So what is this? T043Z, T30. Why it is saying as this thing? Just a second. So normally we should have from that list T043. One second. Our company code is perfect. T01343, right? T043G. What is this? Uh, I think, yeah. Looks like we have missed one configuration step. Let's see that. Okay, I got it. I think this is something relating to tolerance. We have not maintained the tolerance for the, yeah, got it. So let's get into that configuration. SPRO. I'm just going into the financial accounting. We have done some configuration, right, on the tolerances. Okay, we have maintained some tolerances on the GL accounts. On the user side, right? On the user side, we have maintained a tolerance. So similarly, we will be maintaining the tolerances, you know, tolerances for the vendors and customer. We have not maintained. So this is the one that we have maintained, defined tolerance groups for employees, right? We have maintained the tolerance over here, but we have not maintained the tolerance for vendors and customers. So let's get into that. Business transactions and outgoing payments. Okay, manual outgoing payments. Yeah, define tolerance for vendors. If we do for vendors, the same will happen to the customers as well. So what is this tolerance basically, as we discussed earlier, right? What is the range that is allowed? Okay, you can maintain different tolerances and you can maintain different tolerance group, and we can restrict by giving the relevant authorizations. Okay, so similarly, the same thing we will be doing for vendors and customer. Okay, define tolerance. So if I make some changes over here, it impacts on the customer side as well. Okay, define tolerances. What is the path for this is IMG, financial accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, business transactions, outgoing payments, manual outgoing payments, define tolerances. So just execute here. We don't have a tolerance group over here. 1248 is not at all there. Now see here, tolerance group. Okay. I don't know whether we have created a tolerance group in our finance side. I mean, from the employees perspective. Let me just see that. 1248, we have not created any group. Tolerance group is not created here, so we can ignore the tolerance group even here in the vendors and customers. So define tolerances, just execute here. We don't have our own. You can see the standard one, 0001. Double click on that, you can see the similar one. How much you want to allow a permitted payment difference, all these things you can see. Okay, so now in order to have our own, let's create, go into new entries, or you can copy from the existing. So going into new entries, our company code is 1248, and if we are not creating any tolerance group, I'll just say tolerance group for 1248. Clearing transaction, grace days, due date. Do you want to allow few more days additional to the net due date? You can do that. And arrears base date, what is the base date that you want to consider for arrears days? Okay, arrears days. Suppose if I say blank, determine days in areas according to the document date. As I mentioned earlier, due date always be based on the document date. Okay, so if you keep that blank, it means determine days of areas according to the document date. So if I keep it blank, based on the document date, system will derive the net due date. Determine days in areas according to the value date of bank item. If at all you have a bank item, and if at all you have a value date, and based on that, that will be triggered. But normally we will go by document date. So just keep that as blank. Cash discount terms, that we will discuss later. Now here, permitted payment difference. What is the amount that you want to permit as a difference? Suppose now if the amount, if the open invoice, I mean vendor invoice amount is 1,000. Now if I mention here as $50, then out of 950, out of 1,000, I can make a payment until 950. Suppose if the payment amount is 940, it means a difference of 60, then system will not allow. What is the maximum amount that you want to allow as a difference? If I have 10,000, can I make 9,000, 9,500, or 10,000? That is based on this. Okay, I'll say 100. Okay, I'll say 100, or difference, or percentage, right? Whichever is the lower, that will be considered. I'll say 5% or 100, whichever is lesser. Okay, next, adjusted discount amount by, what is the discount amount that you want to consider? You can restrict further here, that we will see later. This is a discount related stuff that we will see later. Permitted payment difference for automatic write-off. So we will not be considering at this moment, just we can ignore it. Specifications for posting residual items for payment difference. In the case of residual, how do you want to consider? Payment term from invoice. Do you want to consider the payment term from invoice? Yes, we can consider that. Select the same thing. Only grant partial discount. Do you want to allow partial cash discounts? Then select the same thing. Otherwise, no. So normally we don't select partial discounts. If at all we have any cash discounts, of course we will be discussing a cash discount, a separate topic for that, separate topic for us. So we will discuss that part. But normally we don't select a partial cash discounts. Okay, whatever the cash discount that is allowed, that will be considered. This partial discount, cash discount, will come into picture only when you want to consider the partial payments. Out of the total invoice, so this is what the maximum cash discount allowed. So do you want to consider in partial? Okay, so that is what this thing. And do you want to consider any fixed payment term for this tolerance? If you want, you can keep. Otherwise, you can ignore. Okay. The dunning key is not required. This is for payment advisors. Payment advice is a separate concept that comes here in the automatic payment program that we will see. Normally, we don't maintain anything. Okay, just to save. So we have created a tolerance group for vendors and customers. Now we have maintained only for a vendor, but if you go and check in the customer side, you can see now here also you can see here customer and vendor. It says for both. Now if you go back and see for customers, this is for manual outgoing payment. Now incoming payment, go into incoming payment, manual incoming payment. You can see tolerance group for employees, tolerance group for users, and tolerance group for customers. Just select here, you can find 1248. So it means if you do it in the vendor side, it happens on the customer side as well. Okay, I think that is the problem. Let's get into F-53 and see. So I'm just selecting F-53, selecting the date, bank account I'm selecting, amount I'm selecting 35,000. Bank charges, another concept we have, vendor payment. I'll say I'm selecting the vendor. Hope we should not have any error. Yes, 5 items were selected. So these are the 5 items that we can see. Now, the total of all these 5 items is 1,05,000. $1,05,000. Okay, but why I'm saying these are all in blue color? It means all these are in the blue colors active mode. So the total amount is 105,000. Whereas in the initial screen, we have entered 35,000 that you can see here. Amount entered as 35,000 and the amount assigned as 1,05,000. So there is a difference of 70,000. And if you want to go and simulate, system will not allow us to do that. So when the not assigned amount is zero, then only the system will allow us to simulate and save. So since we have these activated, so since all the open items are activated and the total amount is showing as 105,000, and we have to make equalize both of them. Now, how do I deactivate it? I can deactivate individually. There are two ways. I can deactivate individually just by double clicking on the line item. See, it became in black color. Now the amount reduced. Or again, if you want to activate, double click again on that. Okay, activate it. So you can activate it manually. It means select the individual invoices and do this deactivation until you know this makes this becomes zero. Or if you have some thousands of line items, how can we do that? So deactivating each line item is little cumbersome for us. So how can we do that? So keep a cursor on one of the items, and here you have an option called select all. Yeah, this is a select all. Okay, the this icon is called select all. Selecting the select all, it means I've selected all of them now. Here you have an option to activate, deactivate. So this is for activate items and this is for deactivate items. Now I'm just selecting this all all became deactivated. Now if you see assigned amount showing as 0. Now here also I cannot simulate and save. Now what I will have to do now, I will have to activate the relevant line item. This may be multiple also. You may have multiple line items as well. Okay, you may have multiple line items, but make sure that both amount entered and assigned amount are same. Okay, suppose if I enter 25,000 initially. Since I don't have 25,000, I have to select both of them, 12,500, 12,500. I can select multiple invoices also. It does not mean to consider only one invoice. You can consider multiple invoices. That is what I have mentioned here. It may be one invoice or it may be a multiple invoice. I can select multiple invoices also. So I can select multiple invoices, but I'll make sure that the amount is 0. Okay, now it is 0. Then go to document, simulate exchange rate difference incomplete. So here for 1,30,000 exchange rate, since we have foreign currency revaluations and we have maintained exchange rates, right? For 1,30,000 also we have some exchange rates. Then system is expecting OBA1 the configuration. If you see over here, exchange rate difference accounts are incomplete for accounts. Double click on that error. Here you have option exchange rate different accounts are incomplete for accounts 1,30,000 USD. You can select here to proceed to that particular thing. Okay, OBA1, which we have seen already. KDF, this is the transaction code OBA1. Select KDF and chart of accounts. Here we don't have 1,30,000. So select any one of these accounts and just copying 1,30,000. Okay, just press enter and save. Back. So you don't have to go here. You don't have to go. You don't have to open another screen. Go into SPR and you can do. You can also do it from the proceed option, or you have sometimes you have an option this configure. This is called customizing. If this is active, this icon is active. If you select, it will take you to the same place. You don't have to go into SPRO, find out the relevant path. You can do it from here also. Either you can do proceed, or you have one more option called customizing. Configure icon. This is called configuration icon. You can select this as well. Close it. Okay, going back, F-53. Okay, I'm just deactivating manually now in order to make this 0. Okay, go to document, simulate now. I've got the amount. See here, realized gain or loss. Why it is activated? It is expecting some information. So text, I will say realized gain or loss. Okay, cost center. This is an expenditure. So expenditure requires the cost center. So select the same thing. Okay, or you can maintain the default cost center in transaction code called OKB9. Okay, in OKB9 also you can do that. So we have already seen OKB9 transaction, go into profitability analysis, go into flow of actuals, direct postings from FI and MM, and automatic account assignment. OKB9, this is the most important transaction code. Just execute. Here for 1248, we have already maintained one default cost center for this cost element. So similarly, you can maintain a default cost center for realized loss. Okay, so this is about the default thing. Okay, now I'm going to simulation. I can see now. Okay, now I'm just posting document posted. Go into FB03 15 all zeros. Now you can see here. Okay, just double click on any line item and you can see the details 35,000 USD. If you go into additional, you can find some details. Okay, document, I mean, group currency, hard currency, and everything you can see here. Okay, and here in the vendor line item, you can see this. If you go into additional, you will find some other details. And here it is 0. If I select display currency and when I keep group currency, I have something. Display currency, hard currency, I have, I don't have anything in the GBP. Now, if I select local currency, I don't have anything. Okay, so this is what basically you can change, you can add something new fields to this. Let me add cost center. Let me add profit center also. Okay, now if you see over here 1000 triggered. If you see in the general ledger, you can see the profit center 1000. You can see the cost center here since we have selected here. Okay, the profit center, how did we get this profit center? Basically, it arrives from the default. Sorry, it triggers from the original invoice. Okay, so that is what basically what we call as passive splitting. Okay, so this is what basically the vendor payments. Any questions here?
Nanda,
Hmm.
like you said, if we wanted to assign default cost center, we go to transactions code OK B9, right?
Hmm.
Now, there we can also do default cost center assignment in the cost element too, right?
We don't have an option now.
I mean, okay, in the segment you assign profit center. In the profit center you assign the cost center, and
Sorry, no, I did not get your point.
okay, like in a segment, when you're creating
Mhm.
the segment, you assign profit center if you wanted to use
No,
as a default.
no.
In a profit
In
center,
profit center, we will assign segment.
yeah, in a cost center you assign the
Profit center.
profit center. In profit center you assign the segment, right?
Uh-huh.
So doesn't that cost center becomes default if you assign in a profit center the cost
No,
center?
how? It does not happen. See, for a profit center, you may have multiple cost center. How does the system understand to consider the same? Let me take an example. Suppose I have 1000 profit center. This profit center, I mean, I have 1000 cost center, 2000 cost center, 3000 cost center. These are all the three cost centers I have. And this is the profit center. In all these three cost centers, I have this profit center. Now, if I select a profit center, how does the system understand to select only 1000 or 2000 or 3000? What is the basis? That's the first thing. Second thing is, since the expenditure account requires a CO object, the CO object going to be any of the cost center, WBS or something. The profit center is not the object, cost object at all.
Okay, so when you select one cost object, for example, 2000 cost center, so
Mhm.
it is automatically, select profit center 1000, right?
Correct, correct.
Okay,
Now I'll tell you one thing, one example. Now I'm selecting 1248 company code. I'm selecting 40 as a posting key, selecting an expenditure GL. Why I'm selecting cost center? Why I'm giving profit center? If I have a company code, this company code has a profit center and cost center. Why the system is not picking up? System will never go from top to bottom. System will pick up the lower item, based on the lower item, pick up the next lower item. It means cost center will be here, and below to above to that we will have PC, above to that we will have segment, above to that we will have company code.
okay. So below
Now the
cost,
moment I select the cost center, system will trigger PC, but if I select PC, system will not trigger CC.
okay. But when you select the cost element, then automatically it system selects the cost center, right? Because you
How?
do in a
OKB9. In OKB9 we have an option to say a particular default cost center,
okay,
but we don't have an option to enter a default this thing here anywhere. If you see here, you don't find any defaults here. You don't have an option to enter any default.
oh, okay. I was under impressions that in the cost element you can define the default cost center.
No, 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 we don't have that option.
Okay.
You can do that in OKB9.
Oh, I see. So that is also the same thing, right? OKB9, you are defaulting against the cost element.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Okay,
Oh,
so always it triggers from top, from bottom to top, not from top to bottom.
okay.
When I'm entering company code and when I'm giving an expenditure or income, system is expecting something. Why system is expecting something? Because this company code may have multiple cost centers, multiple profit center. But why system is expecting? So system will never go from top to bottom. It always go from bottom to up. So
Okay.
the moment I consider cost center, system will derive profit center. Within the profit center, if I have a segment, system will select the segment
Oh,
accordingly.
okay. All right. And that brings me another questions. Now, like you said, that we can do profit center defaulted in a cost center, right? So suppose, there will be a situations where we use the cost center, but we don't want to use the default profit center. In that case, what can be done?
What does it mean?
Okay, like in a cost center, in the profit center, we give the cost center, right?
No, in profit center, we don't give any cost center. In cost center, we give profit center.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In a cost center, we give the profit center, right? But sometime, there will be a situations, we use that cost center, but we at the same time we don't want to use that default profit center. We wanted to use different
No,
profit center,
one second. I'm a bit confused here. Let's say cost center one has a profit center one.
right?
when you post any transaction using this cost center, this profit center will be derived.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is your question?
Okay. So my question is that, sometime, I mean, maybe there will be a situations, where we wanted to use the CC1 as a cost center, but we don't want to use the profit center one. Rather, we wanted to use different profit center. So is there any functionality where we can, do configurations on that?
So normally system will trigger this only, but you don't want this profit center, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
we can do that substitution. We can use a substitution and we can change that.
Oh, okay. Substitutions and
We have an
validations.
option in substitution. Yes, we can do that in substitution.
Okay. So the system, gives the priority to the substitutions first, and then, it gives priority to this default
The
one.
default one. Yes.
Okay. So system always look for the substitutions rules first. And if it doesn't find anything, then it just picks up, from the
Correct.
default.
Correct.
Oh,
Correct.
okay. Yeah. That was, I always had a questions, I'm so thank you, for clearing my
No, no
doubts.
problem. No problem. Okay. Now, okay. So we discussed the full payment, right? Let us discuss about the partial payment. Let us discuss about partial payment. So I'm just entering the same thing. Bank account is going to be the same, but this time I will select 8,000 and value date I'll put today's date, selecting the same vendor. Okay. Now just process open items. Now here I'm making 8,000 payment. If you see over here, you have an option. This is called standard payment, full payment, partial payment, residual payment. Okay. So this 8,000 cannot be a full payment, standard payment, right? Cannot be a eight. Suppose if I enter 12,500, 12,500 is a full payment for these two items for, but for 15 and 30,000 it will be a partial payment. So based on that you will be acting. Okay, so 8,000 is a partial payment. I'm selecting the partial payment option. Okay, one more thing before we get into that, let me get into FBL1N and I'm selecting all items. Okay, selecting this vendor, company code and execute. I can see some in a cleared item. So 35,000, the full payment I have paid completely. So 35,000 is cleared completely. So this is what a cleared item. These are all open items. It means we still have to make the payments to these line items. This is what the cleared item. You can see all of them in the minus signs. Now, if you select just a cleared item, you can find the payment transaction. And if you just select the open items, you can see only the open items. Okay, now what we are doing, we will be selecting the partial payment to 12,500. Let's say this 12,500 we will pick up and we will make the partial payment. So out of 12,500, we are paying 8,000. So what I will do, I will select here the relevant item. So partial payment. Now what I'm doing, I'm just deactivating it, deactivating this, deactivating this. I want to make it from here. So still I see difference of 4,500 because the original invoice amount shows as 12,500, but whereas we are making 8,000. So in order to make this 8, here we will have to make it as 8,000. So you can do it manually or you just double click on that, that becomes 8,000. You can double click on that or you can enter manually 8,000. Now this is the partial payment. So we are in the partial payment option. Okay. Now I'm going into the document, simulate. Okay. Simulate here. and I'm just saving. Got it. 15 all zeros 1. Going into display, here you can see 8,000. Now, similarly, you can pick up the cost center, profit center, whatever you want, you can select. I will also select something. Okay, we'll see if at all we require, we can pick up that accordingly. Now here it is showing as a blank. Now when I get into the general ledger view, it is triggering 1000. It means system is deriving the profit center from the original invoice. This is what we call it as passive splitting. This is what we call it as passive splitting. Next. So double click on that. You can see some information. Okay. And you can go into additional details. You can see some information. Okay, so this is what basically the partial payment. Now let's get into the line item report and see. So this is the one we have picked up, right? Now in the partial payment case, both original invoice and payment will be showing in the open item. If you see 12,500 and 8,000, both are appearing in the open item. Both are appearing in the open item. So until we make the full payment to this, it will show you as open item. It will show you as an open item. Any questions here?
No.
Okay. Now what I will do, I'll pay the balance 4,500. At the time of paying balance 4,500, we will do in a different way. Let me show you that. 4,500 value date, just enter. Right now I'm here in the standard. I'll continue to be there in the standard, though it is a partial amount. I can be here in the standard. Why? Because out of this 12,500, we have already made 8,000. Now we are paying 4,500. That becomes the standard. So if you are going to be here in the standard and you're clearing the amount, all will become the cleared item. But you can also do it from partial. You can select 4,500 against this. Now once you make 4,500 against this original amount of 12,500, 8,000 and 4,500 all will be in the open item. Then you will have to clear them manually. I'll show you that now. Okay, so I'm going to be there in the partial and I will continue. So remember one thing, if you are there in the standard and if you just deactivate the one which are not required and you are selecting 12,500, already you made a payment of 8,000, now you are paying 4,500, this is zero. Now on simulating and saving all three, it means 12,500, 8,000, 4,500 all will become green items, cleared items. But this does not happen if you select the partial payment. It does not happen in the case of partial payment. Now what I'm doing the partial payment. It just like, against this 12,500, I'm paying 4,000. It means it's a partial payment, and I'm simulating here. You can see all these three amounts in the open item. So you see 8,000, 12,500. Go back and execute, or you can refresh it from here also. You have a refresh icon. Once you click on this, you can get it. See 8,000, 4,500, and 12,500. All these are the open items. If you clearly pay the partial amounts only, then all will show as open item. Then again, we have to use another transaction code to clear all of them. So let's see that. Or instead, if you use a standard option, then that becomes cleared automatically. So we don't have to do anything on that. F-44 or something, I don't remember exactly the transaction. Yes, F-44. F-32, I think in the case of customer, F-32. Okay, so F-44 clear payments manually. Okay, clear vendor payments manually. Path for this is easy access, accounting, financial accounting, accounts payable, account, and clear F-44. Just double click on that, take the vendor. Okay, I will say 25th August 2019. Okay, you don't have any special GL, just select open item. Now what are the relevant items? Just select all of them and deactivate the remaining items. So 12,500, 4,500, and 8,000. Now here it is showing 0. Go to document, simulate, and you can post. So here it is again, it is expecting the cost center. So 1,000, I will say gain or loss. Okay, go to document, or you can select simulate here, then save. Okay, now if you go back to the line items, you can see the difference. So all 12,500, 4,500, 8,000 all became cleared items. So this is the document number, cleared all. You can see all of them here, clearing document. So in the payment, we got the KZ, it's a document type. At the time of payment, we got this document number, and this will be your clearing document to the original invoice. This way you can connect both of them. I mean, when a document number and the clearing document are same, it means you're clearing the relevant invoice document. Okay, so this is what basically the partial. Let's see the residual process. Again, I'm going into F-53. I'm selecting the same. So here I will say 9,000. Okay, residual amount. This is again a partial amount. Residual amount is nothing but a partial amount, but we are using a different option. So I'm selecting the same vendor, press enter. or you can select this. Now here I want to make against this 15,000. So deactivating, you can do deactivate individually, or you can select all. Yeah, select all, and you can deactivate. Okay, so now against 15,000, I'm paying 9,000. So it is not going to be full amount. It can be a partial amount. Within the partial amount, you can use partial amount or residual amount. So I'm selecting now residual amount. Okay, residual amount. What is the balance amount that I can see here? 6,000. That amount should appear here. So just double click on that. You can find that 6,000 over here. The balance amount you can see here. So this way it becomes zero now. Okay. So, or you can enter manually, or you can just double click on that. You can see here. Now I'm doc I'm going into document simulate. I can see the entry with the balance amount. You see now 6,000. Here, double click on that, enter text. I will say balance amount. Okay, so simulate again, and now save it. Now you will find a lot of difference here on the line item report. So this is the one we have picked up. Now if you go back or refresh it, you can see the balance amount only in the open item. The original amount 15,000 got cleared, and only the balance amount is showing as the open item. It means the partial amounts will get cleared automatically using the residual option. Any questions?
No.
Right. This is about payment process. And if you make the balance amount 6,000, then this also become green color. And out of 6,000, if you pay 2,000, let's say that 6,000 will clear 2,000. And what is the balance amount? 4,000 can be seen over here. That's the difference. Okay, so that's about the vendor payments. Now let's see the payment terms. Okay, let's see the payment terms. So as we discussed about the payment terms are basically the number of days that we are getting or we are allowing while making the payment, while the payment happens. Okay, so that's about the payment terms. It is an agreement between the two parties, right? Between the two parties, it can be a firm with vendor or it can be a firm with customer. So that's about the payment terms. Should be somewhere here. Yeah, maintain terms of payment, OBB8 or OB08, OBB8, I think. OBB8 is the transaction code, I think. Okay, maintain terms of payments. The path for this is IMG, financial accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, business transactions, outgoing invoices, credit in memos, and maintain payment terms of payments. Just execute. Okay, so this is what basically the payment terms. We have some standard. If you want, you can use them. Just scroll down. You can see different. Okay, you can see different. So we don't have many, but we have just 9 only. If you want, we can create our own. Okay, we can create our own. So what we will do, we'll create our own. Go to new entries. I'll just select two or three. I will create two or three payment terms. I will say 12. I'm just selecting first two digits as our company code digits, and I'll say 30. It means 30 days. Okay. I will say text as 30 days of payment term. Okay. I will say 30 days payment terms. Now, days limit, days limit. Okay. Days limit. So how many days limit that you want to extend? Now, if I'm just selecting F1, I days limit, days of the month up until which the corresponding terms are valid. It means how many days do you want uh, do you want the payment terms to be active? Okay, so if I don't select any days, it means it is active forever. And the days, if I mention something, it means that will be deactivated once the date is passed. Suppose for terms of payment, which depends on whether or not the baseline date is after or before the 15th of the month, you can define a two-part payments terms under the same terms of the payment key. The terms of payment key is expanded by the days limit entered or here. Thus, these are two entries in which different terms can be specified. So days limit, as I mentioned, it is basically helps in the activating the payment terms. So basically, we have one concept called installment payment terms. So what exactly the installment payment terms is, out of the total invoice, how much you want to pay in the first installment and how much you want to pay in the second installment. Let's say total invoice amount is 1000. Out of 1000, I want to pay 230 days and the next $250 in 45 days and the balance amount in 60 days. If I mention that, it means I'm splitting the amount. That is what we call it as installments. So basically we can use this in the case of that area. So the following terms of payment require you to enter a day limit. Documents with an invoice date on or before 15th of the May month are payable on the first day of the next month. Document which has an invoice after 15th of the date are payable on the 15th of the month after the next month. So here if you see, it is kind of an installment, but it is it is not the partial payment amount, but it is totally depending on the it is totally on the amount. Suppose if I put it as 15th here, whatever the documents I'm posting until 15th, that will be paid on the last day of the month. So whatever the invoice I've been posting until 15th of whatever the hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Nanda.
Yeah. Okay. So whatever the invoices I'm posting until 15th of that particular month have to be paid on the last day of the month. If I have any invoices after 15th, those will have to be paid of 15th. See, are payable on 15th of the month after the next month. Okay, after the next month, in the sense next month we will have to pay only after 15th. That is what day limit, that is the condition we have. Okay, so normally we don't consider this at all because we don't want to go that option. Now whether you want to use these payment terms for both customers and vendors, yes, we can use that. Fixed day, fixed day. So baseline date calculation. Do you want to consider a fixed day for the baseline calculation? Suppose if I say 10th, it means system will consider 10 irrespective of the day, system will consider the 10th as a baseline date and accordingly calculates the net due date. Or if I don't enter anything, the document date will be considered for a baseline date. So normally we don't select here. If you enter 10th, always it will be considered as a 10th of that particular month as a baseline date. Now additional month. Additional months, nothing but, you know, for the baseline date calculation. Suppose document date, I'm not entering any fixed date, document date, I'll say 1st of January. Now additional month, if I say 2 months, it means I'm entering document date as 1st January and selecting payment terms as 30 days, but my additional months as 2 months. It means my my document date, though my document date's saying as 1st January, and since I've mentioned 2 months, system will consider system will add 2 months. It means 2 months in the sense 1st of March, right? 1st of March, and from 1st of March, system will consider 30 days. It means the net due date going to be 31st of March. Let me clarify this. Suppose I'm posting a transaction on 1st of January. Now my payment terms are 30 days. Okay, so my document date is first and my baseline date is also the same. My baseline date is also the same. 30 days payment terms. It means my due date will be 31st January, right? 31st January, my due date. Now we have a situation. I'm selecting all of them the same, but I have a additional months thing, additional months here. I have additional months, say 2 months, additional months, 2 months. If I say additional months, 2 months, it means what will be my, this is my baseline date, payment terms. Yeah, sorry, this is not required. So yeah, so uh, 1st of January, 1st of January will be my baseline date. 30 days will be my due date is 31st January. Now, the moment I say document date, baseline date, and my payment terms 30 days, along with the additional months, 2 months, it means 2 months will be added to the baseline date. Then what will be my baseline date in that case? The revised baseline date going to be revised baseline date will be 2 months to this. It means I will say 1st of March 2019. Now to this payment terms 30 days will be added and my due date going to be 31st March. That is the meaning of this additional months. Okay.
Nanda, why is this complications? I mean, it's simple. Define 90 days term. Simple as that. Rather than going,
No, no,
defining
no.
30 days and
I'm
2 months.
No, this is basically a condition for this. This is based on the payment terms. If I select this payment terms, this is what the condition. We cannot change the baseline date, right?
Hmm.
According to the conditions, it says 30 days only, but we cannot change. Normally, we should not change the baseline date manually. We are posting now here manually. Of course we can change if the transactions are happening from interface from the other sources. Then how are we going to manage them? We cannot go and change the baseline date for each of the invoices. So this is one condition. Instead of saying as 90 days, they will say additional months.
Okay, so this will help only at the time of interface.
Not only in the, I cannot say that in the interface, but even in the case of manual payments, you can use that. This is an additional option we have, that's it. Okay, now here payment block. This is for blocking the payment. What is a blocking? What it means, we cannot make the payments when you have this payment terms in any of the invoices. So normally we don't select this. Now here default for baseline date. Default for baseline date. Now you want to consider document date, or do you want to consider posting date, or do you want to consider entry date? Default is document date only. By default, it will be a document date. If you select no default, it means it is document date only. Okay. Suppose if I selected document date or posting date, system will consider accordingly. System will consider that accordingly. Next, this is the installment payments. Installment payments. So we will discuss this part little later. Okay. And hide entry in input help. Okay. So do you want this to be suppressed, or do you want this to be appeared at the time of posting an entry, or you don't want? If you don't want, you can select this. You can select this hide entry. Okay. I'm just saving now. So similarly, you can do the other things. And if you want, you can copy it. Just select the same thing and copy it to 1245. Something is wrong in the system. It is going into dump. Okay, financial accounting, accounts payable, accounts receivable, business transactions. Where did we see that? Payment terms, not here, I think. Release for payments, not here. Yes, incoming invoices and credit memos, maintain terms of payment. Just scroll down to find us. So this is us. Select the same thing. Go to copy, select copy. It's not working. Something is wrong. But you have an option to copy it. So here there is some problem in copying it. Incoming invoices and credit memos, maintain terms of payments. So I will go and create another one, 1245. I will say 45 days. I will say 45 days, and I'm just saying, okay, I'm saving. Okay, so go back. All are 30 days, some end of this 10th of, and you may have one more also called immediate. So if you go up extreme up, pay immediately without any deduction. If you double click here, you can see that. Okay, you can see that pay immediately, pay immediately. pay immediately. Okay, so I think I missed one point. In fact, I missed one point. Oh, sorry, I missed one point here. If you see over here, double click on that and double click on that. I have mentioned as 30 days in the text, but nowhere I have mentioned 30 days, right? 30 days I have not mentioned anywhere. So how does the system understand that it will be a 30 days? I think this is based on the day limit only. For terms of payment, which depends on whether or not the baseline date is after the 15th, you can define two payments, but the information is saying differently. I think day limit only will give us the number of days. No, no, that's fine. Yeah, I got it, got the point. So not here. So here what I will say, 100% number of days as 30 days. Number of days as 30 days. So 100% I will say and 30 days. Okay, one second. I lost the concept over here. This is not going to be an installment. Yeah. Okay, fine, fine. I'm sorry. Okay, so here one thing I've just realized, payment terms I've just mentioned as 1230 and I've mentioned 30 days as a description, but nowhere I have mentioned number of days as 30, right? Nowhere I have mentioned as 30 days, right? The 30 days will come based on this number of days. Here we are not mentioning any percentage because it is not a installment payment. We will see that install payment, then you will understand this percentage part little later. But here the number of days are 39, 30 days that we have mentioned over here. Number of days are 30 and just save. Okay, and similarly we will have to do for the next item. I'm selecting the next option. You have 1245 here, 45 days. I will be entering 45 days. So system is understanding based on the number of days that we are entering over here. Again, we can say fixed day and additional months as we have mentioned over here. Okay, so just to save it, just to save it. Okay, so we have entered 30 days and 45 days. We have created two payment terms, 30 days and 45 days. Let's post a transaction using this payment term. So we will have a clear idea of how this thing is working. I'm going into FB60. So this is a transaction, we call it as invoice. We have another option also called credit memo. What is credit memo, that we will see. Okay, I'm selecting vendor 25th August 2019, 25th August 2019. I will say some 17,500, 17,500. I'm putting star over there and I will say here cost center 2000. So I'm just posting now. So sorry, I will have to consider the payment terms. So I'm going into payment here. I will select 12:30. So my baseline date is this one. Now, the moment I say enter, now I got 30 days here. See, now baseline date is 25th of August. Using this 30 days, it is going to be the due date is on 24th September. 24th September. Any questions? Any questions here?
Can you override that payment terms here? Yeah.
We can write, we have entered this manually. Normally, what happens is this payment terms will come by default if we enter this payment terms in the master data. I'll show you that. We can write now. If I want, I can put 45 now. It will change accordingly. Or if I say 0001, it is immediate 0 and it says as immediate. So 12:30, we will say 12:30 here and we will just simulate, we will just simulate now. Yeah, this is a simulation and I'm just saving. That's it.
So when you define the payment terms in a vendor master and also on the invoice, which one get first preference?
Invoice one, invoice the one.
Okay.
By default, you will have it from the master data. And if you change in the invoice posting will be considered. Okay, now if you see over here, let me select terms of payment here. Terms of payment. I think payment terms. Let's see payment. Yeah, payment date. No. Baseline payment date. Payment method.
Oh,
Payment.
here, payment terms. It's
Payment
a
terms here.
first.
Yeah. So here you can select document date. I will say baseline date also. Mhm. Baseline date. Let me select. I'm selecting baseline date, net due date. I will select net due date also. Net due date. Now you see, this is the one we have selected. Document date is this thing. Baseline date is this thing. Payment terms 12:30 and net due date is this. Of course, you can change that. Let me go to BP transaction 200, 100. I will change. Okay, select the FI. Okay, company code. Select company code tab. Here we will have payment transactions and I can select payment terms. Now save it. Okay, now let's post a transaction. FB60 200. I'm selecting something over here. I'll say 20 to 500. Selecting the star, selecting the cost center. save. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Display here. If you see, double click on the line item, vendor line item, you can see payment terms 1230. But I will post another transaction to show you. Okay, so I will say 22,000. One thousand, and I'll go into payment terms. We'll change this to 45. Okay, I'm saving. Now let's go back to the line item report. Go to list, refresh it. You can see now the other 22,000, 22,500. Double click on 22,000. You can see payment terms as 1245. Okay, so based on that, this is the baseline date, and the net due date will be based on the revised payment terms. If you want, you can select that one as well. You can create a layout for this. Net due date will be this one. Clear? Any questions?
How to set up your own layout if you wanted to use your own?
This one. So just you need to go here, save it. Okay, slash z sap. And if you want, you can keep user specific. If you say just user specific, it will allow for you only. No one can access this layout. If you
Oh,
don't select it, it is applicable to everyone. You can select the same thing here in this. ZSAP is the one that we have selected. Just execute. What happened? That one is not. So select here. Oh, ZSPP. I've selected ZSPP. Now execute. You can see. Or you can select from here also, of course. You can select it from here also. You can select it from here. Or you can select in the selection screen itself. You can see this. Any questions?
no.
So we have one concept called special GL indicator. Let me give you some brief of that, and we will see this transaction later. Now, when I'm going here, when I'm posting an invoice, okay, we have seen an invoice, right? We have seen an invoice. Now, the invoice, if I want to write, let me take an example. I've posted an invoice of 10,000. Okay, debit expenses, credit vendor. Okay, 10,000. Now we got a discount or something we got, and we want to reduce this amount. It means the vendor invoice going to be 6,000 only. So 6,000 only the vendor invoice. There are two options to make this thing. Either you will have to delete this. It means you will have to reverse this document, and you can post a fresh transaction of 6,000, or you can reduce 4,000. If you post 4,000 transaction, then this becomes a 6,000. It means if you subtract 4,000 from expenses and 4,000 from vendor, this becomes a 6,000. How do you do that? How do you subtract it? Now vendor here is credited. If I do a debit vendor with 4,000 and expenses debit here, if I do a credit here with 4,000, then this becomes the vendor invoice becomes a 6,000 ultimately, right? This process is nothing but a credit memo. Returns, basically we call it as returns. In the case of returns, we will do this. Basically, in the case of returns, we will do the invoice. Now, in order to do an invoice directly, a credit memo, you can do it from here, or you have another transaction code to do that. FB65. For 60, we have 65. For 60, we have 65. For F-43, we have F-40. So if you go here in FB65, you can see directly credit memo. And if you want, you can select the invoice from here also. So similarly in F-43, if you go in F-43, you can see here 31 as a posting key. Now if you go here in F-41, you can see 21. So for 31, we have seen 31, right? So 31 vendor credit, 21 vendor debit credit memo. So you can do in either the way. Now let me do FB60 and I want to show you one thing. So I'm just selecting, right. So I'm posting. Good. Now, if you see over here in the payment, you can see the payment terms and everything. Okay. And when you go into the details, you can see a GL account. This is what the reconciliation GL account. This is what the reconciliation GL account. This is what the vendor number, vendor code. This is not the GL, but this transaction will appear here in this GL. 1,30,000 is the GL. So GL will be triggered. Okay, and I'm just saving. If you go into the display, you can find there also. Here, this is a vendor account, right? Double click here. This is the document number, and above to that, you can see GL account. This is the vendor code, and this is the GL account. Vendor is a liability for us. Okay, vendor is a liability for us. Now, let's say we are posting vendor invoices or liabilities for us. Now sometimes we have we have a concept called advances come into picture. What are these advances? Let's say we have a vendor in Australia. We have a vendor in Australia. It does not mean it happens only outside the country. Maybe you can have advances within the country also. Let's say we have one vendor in Washington, or we have in some place Texas or somewhere. Okay, and we are requesting him to send across some materials. Okay, some materials, or we are asking some technician to come up to rectify some issue. Now, what they ask sometimes is they expect some advance amount. Let's say the invoice amount is of $1 lakh, or the material value is $1 lakh, but they are expecting some 20,000, 10,000 of advance. They expect. That depends on different situations. They expect some advance. The advances are not liabilities for us. Basically, invoices are liabilities for us, because once we have a vendor invoice, it means we have to pay vendor. We have to pay the amount to the vendor, right? That will be a liability for us. But advance is nothing but before the invoice is coming up, before the material is coming up, we are giving some advances. It is nothing but an asset for us. Vendor advances are nothing but assets for us. So in the case of vendor lab invoices, we have created a GL, 1,30,000, right? 1,30,000. But whereas in the case of advances, we cannot use the same GL, because this GL is a liability GL. Whereas advances are not liabilities, advances are assets. So we will have to use something from 2 series. All 2 series GLs are assets in our case. So we cannot use same 1 series GL. Instead, we will have to use a 2 series, because these advances are assets for us. These advances are assets for us. How can we do this thing? Okay. Now, this process is called alternative reconciliation account. This process is called alternative reconciliation. What I'm telling the system, when I'm using this vendor, it means in our case 200, 100, system always consider 1,30,000. Now how can I make, and in the case of advance, how can I make instead of 1 lakh 1 series GL, uh, 2 series GL? So there is a concept called alternative reconciliation account. It means we are telling the system not to consider 1 series, we are telling the system to consider 2 series. So here, in order to tweak that, in order to swap the GL accounts, we have a concept called special GL indicator. In the case of special GL indicator, we are considering this thing. It means we using the special GL indicator. GL indicator, let's say code is one. One is a special GL indicator code. It means whenever I'm posting a transaction using this special GL indicator one, what system does is system understand alternative reconciliation. It means system understand that not to consider 1,30,000, instead 2,30,000, since we have maintained the numbers here in the alternative reconciliation account configuration. That is the concept of special GL indicator. So special GL indicator comes in the case of advances. Okay, so we are telling the system not to consider this regular reconciliation account. We are asking the system to consider a different reconciliation account created for advances. Any questions here? Okay. So we will discuss that in the next class, in tomorrow's class. Tomorrow we will have, okay, so tomorrow we will have our class